GLF's Brave New World welcomes you back to our second session of the day. Those of you who missed our earlier session, The Dancer and the Dance, Sonal Mansingh, in conversation with Suneet Tandon, and all the other sessions featuring Vikram Chandra, Sanjeev Sanyal, Devdutt Patnaik, Jairam Ramesh, Marcus Mensch, Andrew Shongrier, Anna Chandy, and so many others. You may watch these on our Facebook page, JLF Lit Fest, or on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Lit Fest JLF. Our official radio partner, Red FM, Bajate Raho. Our next session is Every Creature Has a Story, Janaki Lenin and Rom Whitaker in conversation. The wildlife conservationist couple, Rom Whitaker and Janaki Lenin, invite us to explore the hidden wonders of the natural kingdom, discover the secrets of the giraffe's astonishing neck, the song of the female nightingale, the eggs of timid glass frogs, and the evolution of bearded dragons. Through every creature has a story in this enchanting session. Janaki Lennon writes about natural history. She's the author of the books My Husband and Other Animals and My Husband and Other Animals, Part 2. The wildlife adventure continues, and her book Every Creature Has a Story, which will be released at the end of this month by HarperCollins. Rom Whitaker was born in New York and came to India at the age of 8. Whitaker set up Madras's Snake Park in 1969 and the Crocodile Bank in 1976, the Andamans Environmental Trust in 1989, and the Agumbe Rainforest Research Station in 2005. His awards include an Emmy, the Whitley Fund for Nature, a Rolex, and a Padma Shri. Please do remember to comment and ask questions by typing it in the comment section below. And in case any of you drop off due to bandwidth issues, you can find us on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Lit Fest GLF. And of course, if we drop off, if we freeze, just hang in there and we'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, every creature has a story. Janaki Lennon and Rom Whitaker in conversation.
Hi, everybody. Rom Whitaker here. And Janaki Lennon. Janaki, did you always want to be a writer?
Unlike you, who had a focus from a very young age, I had no focus at all in my life. I wanted to be a doctor one day, a writer the next day, so I don't think it was a serious pursuit. I became a writer only when I was 34 years old. Remember, we were filmmakers and I was very unhappy being a filmmaker, but I didn't have any other skills. So the only thing I knew to do was writing. And I always felt like an imposter. I thought anyone who sees me pretending to be a professional writer could say imposter written on my forehead. So I've just been smoozing my way through this. But what about you? You are like my paragon of focus. You knew from a very young age what you wanted to do, right?
I did. As far as the writing goes, though, I just sort of used it as part of what I do. I mean, communicating with other people about my lovely reptiles. It's pretty difficult. People don't like snakes, and yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you always into the outdoors?
I think so. I grew up in the city, but we had a garden and we had a terrace above the roof, so I could see the canopy and the clouds undisturbed by anybody. But I only had a very short period of time to do that. I was always being told to go study or do my homework. So I always say that my interest in the outdoors went, way high after meeting you. So I'm going to switch that question to you. But even though it has an obvious answer, were you always interested in the outdoors?
Oh, actually, yeah, I caught my first snake when I was 4 years old, and that did it. Well, I blame my mother on the whole thing. She was the one who encouraged a young lad to go on catching snakes. That's ridiculous. No mother in their right mind would do that, but she did, and here I am. Okay, about you though, were you always? I mean, what genre of literature inspired you most? What reading really inspired you?
I read a whole lot. I think I gravitate towards nonfiction because that's what I write. So I read H's for Hawk, for instance, and Wild recently. And I also read a lot of literature, I mean, fiction, um, like Dacha Gocha was a recent read translated from Kannada by Srinath Peru, and Madeline Miller, for instance, and who else? Tim Winton is another favorite writer. But I really now and then like to get into a good crime thriller. Yeah.
Okay.
What about you? What do you read?
Oh boy, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that. I mean, if I haven't got a sci-fi novel around, it's nonfiction. Yeah, and actually, I read a lot of what you tell me to read. Okay, when did you start writing? Why did you start writing on wildlife?
Well, you can only write what you know, right? And all my experience was in wildlife when I started writing, so I stuck with it. And luckily for me, there was a niche for it, so I just went for it. There's no great plan or strategy there.
Okay, but I'm sure that what or who are your inspirations, or were your inspirations to start, and still are your inspiration to write about wildlife?
I think it's the animals and plants themselves, but also some of the people I look up to as a writer are Franklin Russell, David Quammen, Diane Ackerman, and this writer called Douglas Chadwick, whom I haven't read in many years. So there are writers like that who inspire me as well. Yeah.
Okay, but you sort of evolved or developed from there, from wildlife in general, into specific stuff. Like, how did you get into science writing and writing about animal behavior?
Well, you have yourself to blame for that. I think it began when we started making films together. So the very first film we worked on together was this film about the king cobra and the western Ghats. And you said I had to go off and do this research on all the other species that were going to feature in the film, like the great Indian hornbill, dove, boar, features like that. So I went to the Indian Institute of Science. Yeah, and elephants. So I went to the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore library, and I spent the day just reading up on animal behavior, and in the evening and at lunchtime, I would talk to researchers who were studying these creatures. And I remember being really absorbed and fascinated by that. So when I started writing, I wanted to go back to recapture some of that. And I don't know whether I made a mistake or not, because if I felt like an imposter as a writer when I went into science writing, I felt like even more of an imposter, like it was imposter in bold, because I had no science background and I was like trying to understand things the hard way by reading word by word, literally. So I wanted to ask you, considering that you have had the focus all your life on reptiles and doing research and conservation, have you ever felt like an imposter yourself? Have you suffered from that syndrome?
The nice thing about reptiles and snakes in particular, if you started out at age 4 being the guy, the obnoxious little kid telling adults, hey, you should like snakes. Most of them aren't poisonous. They won't bite you, and so on and so on. Shut up, kid, is what I could imagine them saying. So I always was kind of, I don't know, the king. That's how it's
Lucky for you.
Yeah, I just chose the right subject. But let me ask you, can you give us a sneak preview about your new book? Your new book, Every Creature Has a Story, that's coming out next week, right?
Yeah, it's a collection of 50 essays of the weirdest, craziest, most amazing things that animals and one plant do that you wouldn't even suspect. And I really had a great time while writing that, because it just brought so much inspiration to me. I don't have a real book, but I'm going to show you what the cover of the book looks like. So that's what it looks like. Yeah.
So everyone's got to get a Kindle. Is that right? These days?
Well, you can read it on Kindle, and I think it opens for sales on the 27th or 28th July. So.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, are there any reptiles in this book, or is it all stinky mammals and noisy birds?
I knew you would ask that. I think there are a couple of snakes and there are a couple of lizards. And I don't think there are any other kinds of reptiles. But since you're a reptile man, let me ask you this. Did you know there was a snake that has no smell at all?
No smell.
No smell, that's right. So the puppada in Africa, it's got cryptic colors. It's brown, black, and gray colors all in blotches down the length of its body. So when it curls up in leaf litter, you can't see it. So if you're a visual predator, you can't see it, but you would think a predator that hunts by its sense of smell would be able to find it, but this snake has no smell. So even creatures that hunt but with their noses can't see it. So it's like this invisible creature that doesn't exist as far as the snake is concerned. Isn't that amazing?
It is.
Yeah.
Sort of an opposite side of the spectrum. I can't stop thinking about king cobras, my favorite snake. But when you consider how much they depend on scent, when a king cobra has scented its prey, which is another snake, either a pit viper or a cobra or a rat snake, that snake has more or less had it, because the king cobra is going to hunt it down with its incredibly sensitive tongue and find it. It's going to climb a tree, cross a stream. It'll take 45 minutes or an hour, and it will find that snake. It's doomed.
Yeah, I wonder what if a king cobra came upon a puff adder, whether it would be able to find it. I mean, never that they are in two separate continents, so they're not going to meet, thankfully for the puff adder. But
yeah, but there are cobras in Africa which eat puff adders. I'd like to ask some of your researcher friends over there if a cobra could find a puff adder with its incredibly good sense of smell.
Well, the researchers do say that puff adders get eaten by cobras during the puff adders breeding season, because the males are crawling all over the place looking for females. And when they move, their cover is blown, so the cobras can find them and stop them up. And the females want to be found by the males, so they are wandering around laying scent trails, so they are also getting taken by cobras. Clearly not to the same degree as males, but that is the time when they are vulnerable to being eaten by cobras.
Okay. Out of all these stories, how did you choose these stories from the millions of stories that are out there?
It's very simple. Did it make me go wow? So if it made me go wow for like 4 hours, it was in. That was all. That's no big criteria.
Okay. Can you describe the process that you go through in writing these stories?
So I subscribe to press releases and alerts from journals for new papers that come out. And if, at the end of the day, probably one of the last things I do before I go knocking off from work is look through these press releases and see if anything grabs my attention. And then I will give it a really close read. And like I said before, I don't have a science background, so I spend a lot of time reading it, reading other studies in the field, so I understand the context and the significance of the paper. And then I write to the researchers. And I do a lot of homework before I write to the researchers, because I don't want them to think I'm someone who hasn't done proper work. Like I know some people write to you, tell me everything you know about king cobras. I come across as an idiot like that. So I go to a lot of effort to seem intelligent. And I remember once I blew it, I sent off this email to a researcher, and I was mortified to find that the answer was right there in front of my face in the paper, and I was like cringing, expecting the researcher to send back and calling me names. But he was very nice. He wrote back and he gave me this fantastic quote, and I kind of felt liberated after that to be stupid. And I must say that in my experience, researchers have been really, really generous and keen to.
I was going to ask you that, yeah.
Yeah. So I have to thank all of them for keeping my interest in the subject as well. And they are all mentioned in the book, so I won't mention names right now. Yeah.
Okay, as far as I'm concerned, I find it pretty hard to read scientific papers, unless they're about reptiles, of course. But so I really enjoy reading your stories because you're condensing stuff that is very, very interesting, but it's nice and non-scientific and simply structured. Like a film editor should construct something with a beginning, a middle, and the end. I love that.
Yeah, that's a fundamental structure of any story. Like you can't have a murder and not find out how, who did what, where. You need a middle, like the whole process of hunting the killer down, and then you catch the killer, right? So it's the beginning, middle, and the end. So that's the classic structure of the story. So let me just pause there for a second and say, a lot of people are surprised when I talk about stories in nonfiction, because you're not supposed to have stories. It's supposed to be nonfiction. But we follow the same principles of fiction writing, having a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's what makes it readable. Otherwise, I don't know how you would read nonfiction.
Well, that's what puts off people about scientific writing in general, because it's just so difficult to get through the whole thing. And if there is a good, clear beginning, middle, and end, it's hard to find it.
Well, I think if you are a good writer, you fill in all these details. Like you want to know who, what, when, where, how. You have to answer those questions, and that makes a fully rounded story. So
yeah, well, that takes me to your obsession. You always have to find an answer. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. It comes from, I think it's pretty human. It's not special to me. I think you when you get into something, you just latch on to it, and you want to know why something is the way it is, don't you?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll concede that. Okay, this is interesting. How do you balance writing to be lucid enough for an audience to understand it, but still maintaining what they call scientific rigor? How do you do that?
Well, I said some of that before. I take a lot of effort to read the science and ask questions and learn. So it has to be clear in my head before I write.
Sure.
But also the subject I write about, animal behavior, is relatively easy to write about. Like, I don't think I could write about physics, chemistry, for instance, without knowing or without studying the subject. Like I completely, with no science background, I wander into this and I'm able to pick it up. But having said that, I do remember busting a gut over, writing a couple of essays in this collection, for instance, and I just could not make it understandable. It was just so complicated, and I remember cursing myself for, getting into something that was far out of my depth. So, but I eventually cracked it, but it took much longer than all the other essays did. So you just work on it until you crack it, I suppose. That's the short answer.
Yeah. But it probably, there's a lot of backing and forthing even in your head whether people are going to get the same thing out of it that you got out of it. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
things might come out very logically, but to express that to everybody else, that's another job. Okay, which creature of all has the most interesting story?
From this collection, it's hard to pick because I spent so many days, hours working on them, and I've bonded to every single essay and feature in them, I think. Okay, let me put it this way. I would imagine your mother said that your favorite mammal when you were growing up was a giraffe, right?
Okay, yeah, I do remember that.
Okay, so everyone knows of a giraffe. It's the tallest mammal on the Africa in the world. And you don't think much about it, but here is this tall animal with this long neck. It has the same number of bones as in our neck, except each bone, instead of being a few inches, is a foot long. And when your brain is so high up, how do you get blood from your heart to your brain? So the heart is just so powerful to pump blood with such pressure that it goes whooshing up the neck to the brain of the giraffe. Now, when you have such high blood pressure, it creates this problem for the giraffe when it has to drink water, because the water is down on at ground level in the wild. And so what it does is flares its legs and bends down. And when you have such high blood pressure and your head goes down like that below the level of the heart, then you can have a stroke. So it has this valve in its jugular vein that controls the flow of blood. When it bends down to drink water, automatically closes. So when the giraffe then lifts its head up and it's got low blood pressure, it will pass out. So then the valve opens and the giraffe is able to stand and go about its normal life.
Yeah.
There are other adaptations that the giraffe has because of this high blood pressure problem. If you suffer from high blood pressure, the kidneys take a beating, but the giraffe's kidneys are wrapped in this really thick coating that protects the kidneys. And it also, the other symptom of high blood pressure would be fluid retention in the legs. But as you can see in a giraffe, the legs are all spindly. So the way it gets around that problem is the hide of the giraffe wraps tightly around its leg. Sort of like, when you have varicose veins, you ask to wear compression stockings, which hold everything in. Yeah. So the hide of the giraffe functions like that. So a simple thing like that, you see a giraffe, it's an amazing creature.
Yeah.
But it has all these amazing adaptations for the life that it leads, and that really is fascinating. Yeah. But you've read the book, right? Do you have a favorite?
I think one of my favorites certainly is the bar-headed geese that fly over the Himalayas. I mean, give me a break. You're talking about birds flying 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 meters above the Earth's surface, over the mountains. There's hardly any oxygen up there, and they're beating their wings to make it over the top of those mountains so that they can descend, back down to the Chambal River, for example, up in Uttar Pradesh. I mean, man.
I never thought I would hear you talk about birds.
Okay. No, they're highly modified reptiles, as you know. I mean, T.H. Huxley said that. So, yeah. No, but that's just astounding to me. Absolutely astounding. Yeah. What a migration. What a migration. Okay. You say that you are not a conservationista. But you do have a commitment to make people fall in love with what you love, to appreciate nature. Am I right?
Well, I'm a writer. I don't have to be a conservationist just because I write about animals. So my fundamental commitment and loyalty is to tell a story. And in that, I'm no different from a little kid. Like, let's say, a little kid who's on a beach finds a pretty shell and goes up to her mother and says, Mommy, see, I found this.
Okay.
And I think that's all I'm doing. I'm finding these amazing things and I want to share it with everybody, and that's what I do with my writing. But I don't see myself being a conservationist just because I write about it. But you are a conservationist. So tell us what drives you.
I have thought about this. I think it goes back to something like, you know, rooting for the underdog sort of thing. Because from way back, people who didn't like snakes, who didn't like bats, who didn't like toads, I had to just say something to them. I said, look, these are wonderful little creatures. Just take a closer look. Snakes are beautiful. Look the way, how graceful they are, how beautiful they are. But then, of course, the subject comes around to snake bite and how venomous they are and how dangerous they are and how awful. So, yeah, I've kind of spent my life countering all this negative stuff. And I guess that's called conservation. Yeah, you're right.
So
Definitely.
how do you get people to like snakes? I mean, they are so alien looking. They don't relate to anything that we know. It doesn't have legs. It crawls funny and looks scary. So how do you get people to like snakes?
It's interesting because those are some of the very aspects to the animal that make them so attractive. The fact that they are like an alien. They can't hear anything that's going on, for one thing. So their other senses, their tongue, their incredibly sensitive tongue, their sense of smell, their eyesight, and so on, makes up for that. But yeah, the way they can move, it's just absolutely magic. They don't have legs, and yet they can move so smoothly, so fast, and so wonderfully, so graceful. So yeah, there are a lot of very attractive elements to snakes, and I think this is what I would go on and on telling people about. Um, the fact that you know, the more practical things is without snakes we'd be overrun by rodents because they're the best rodent eaters in the world. So there are some practical aspects to it too, which I of course bring in later in life as I grew older and learn more about it. But yeah, it's a tough one. Reptiles are getting popular in this day and age, and it was partly because of television, partly because of certain personalities who made it big on TV with reptiles. So in India, for example, when I was first starting out with my reptile stuff back in the 60s, there were very few people very positively interested in snakes. And now you've got a surfeit of people out there who really do like snakes, love snakes, and are doing very good work for them, for their conservation, and teaching people to avoid snakes, to avoid snake bite. There's a whole group, a huge, vast group, thousands of young women and men who are interested in snakes. So things have changed a lot.
But aren't you worried that a lot of these people seem to see it as a way to show off their macho-ness, and almost all of them are young men?
Yeah. There's always a group of them, and we're kind of working pretty hard. Me and my gang of snake people are working hard to tell people, look, this is not a Facebook sort of trip to play with a cobra and make yourself look like a hero. And have some respect for the snake. And you like snakes? Yes, we like snakes. Then have respect for them. If you get bitten, no one's going to blame you. They're going to blame the snake. Just remember that. So this is the message we've been coming out with. Oh, do you actually care if readers don't like what you write, or how do you respond to readers' reactions? What's your strategy?
In the beginning, when I was uncertain about my abilities as a writer, there was a lot of tension after an article was published. I would really worry that readers wouldn't like it. Then I got really confused because I would pour my heart and soul into an article, and I'd be very proud of how it came out, and it would sink like a stone. Nobody would say a word to say whether they liked it, didn't like it. I just would figure it out. And then I would write something which I'm not very happy about, but because the deadline was too short, I just had to submit it, and then there would be people praising that. So it always confused me, and I still can't figure it out. But it's completely outside my control. I can't help it if people like something and don't like something else. So I've made my peace with it. I'm just happy if people read it. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, but reading your titles is really enough to realize how close we are to animals. I think that's one of the things you're definitely trying to get across to us. Tool use by crows and monkeys, wild dogs that vote, chimps that grieve, spiders that dig oral sex, coy female fish, empathetic rats consoling others, musical cockatoos, angry shrieking fruit bats, dragonfly females playing dead to avoid sex, playful parrots, altruistic humpback whales chasing predators, and even monkeys teaching humans. I mean, what an array.
Yeah, makes you really wonder if what being human is or what being an animal is, what those classifications mean. So yeah.
How different are we?
No, not at all.
Okay, here's a couple of quick ones. Which is the shyest creature you ever come across?
I would say the cane turtle in the Western Ghats is one, and the desert hedgehog in Rajasthan.
Why do you call them shy?
Pangolins.
Okay.
Sorry?
Why do you call them shy? You're talking about what?
I remember waiting for all three, pangolins and hedgehogs, because they roll up into a ball when they are afraid or skittish.
Yeah.
I remember.
Oh, you're taking us back to your filmmaking days, right?
Yeah, my filmmaking days. Poised with a camera, waiting for them to unroll, and my God, my knees went, my legs went to sleep, and I don't think I was ever successful. And in a similar way, the cane turtle was like that. It just, pulled its head into its shell and sat there forever and ever, and it just would not put its head out. I just gave up after that. So those are, I think, I'm sure there are a lot more shy animals, but in my experience, those are the three that come to mind.
And which is the biggest show-off of all the animals?
Show-off?
Yeah. Brash.
I would think the macaque generally, like we have bonnet macaques here in our garden who are pretty much show-offy. Also dolphins. When you go out in a donkey in the ocean in the Andaman, they come bounding out near you like a bunch of puppies. And it's like they slow down their speed so they can go with you at the speed you're going, and you're going at the highest speed. And then they get absolutely bored and they just take off. It's just amazing. So you realize how much they were putting on the brakes just to be with you.
Yeah. Okay. Here's one. What is the most common creature in your dreams?
I would have to say king cobras, and I don't know if I would call them dreams. They're more like nightmares. And I think it relates to the work you do. I'm always concerned about what's going to happen, or worried that things could go wrong so easily. So I think I've had king cobra nightmares for now, some nearly 30 years now, almost 30 years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, take it easy. King cobras aren't nasty creatures. I mean, they only want to keep away from humans. We're the nasty creatures. I've told you.
Yeah, you can rationalize it in your head, but your fears are your fears, right?
Okay. Which is the most underrated of all the animals in your experience?
I guess parasites. And one that, I mean, unless you're calling creatures parasites. So there is this particular one that I like very much called Toxoplasma gondii, which affects rats and other mammals,
You
where
like it
they
very much.
reproduce asexually, but they need to get into a cat to reproduce sexually. So it advertently or inadvertently messes up with the brain of the rat. So it will go and hang out where there's a lot of cat smell and it gets eaten by a cat, and the protozoan jumps into the cat's gut.
Let me get this straight. The rat loses its fear of cats?
Yeah, it does. It seems to. And then it reproduces sexually in a cat's gastrointestinal tract, and then it can produce eggs, which it sheds in the cat litter. And humans can also be affected. It can totally change our behavior and personality. So we might think we are the lords of the planet, but there are these little microscopic things that can totally change the way we are.
And it affects men differently from the way it affects women?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. I think the research on that is still ongoing. There's nothing definitive.
Wow. Okay. Which animal-to-animal interaction has totally zapped you the most?
Humpback whales, like everyone says, one of the traits that sets humans apart from animals is altruism. So humpback whales will go to the rescue of any creature that's being hunted by a pod of killer whales or orcas. They hear the orcas coordinating their hunt, and they will come from several kilometers away to rescue whatever the creature is. It's likely they think it's one of their own who's being attacked, but they don't back off even though they find it's a seal or a sea lion that's being attacked. They will go in to the midst of the killer whales and carry this creature on their chest and go way over the ocean to take this creature out of the reach of orcas.
Wow.
And they will stay with this creature until the killer whales leave, and then the creature is free to go. So they've been known to do that. Lots and lots of observations. Yeah.
Okay. In paging through your book, at one stage, when I come to the end, it's just great to have scientific references at the end of the book for readers who want to dig deeper, and of course to check to make sure that you're just not making up all these groovy stories.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I didn't want anyone to think I was making up these crazy stories. So yeah, no, but also as a reader, I often want to read more about something, and I've always liked this reference section at the back, so it's there for readers to check it out. Thanks so much, Sanjoy, for giving us the opportunity.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, Janaki Whitaker, and thank you, Janaki Lenin, and thank you, Rom Whitaker, for that absolutely brilliant session. And I think one of the reasons why such legions of young people today are taking to studying and working with reptiles and snakes is really the work that you all have done to be able to bring this to the fore. The book with these fabulous stories of the giraffe and how it can lower its head, and of course, the show-off dolphin and the amazing parasite that allows you to forget your fear of a cat and allows then the parasite to be eaten by the cat and jump across. Absolutely magnificent. Thank you both so much for appearing on JLF Brave New World. I'm sorry we couldn't take questions from all our guests today, and we didn't want to stop this. This was absolutely brilliant. We'd like to thank our official radio partner, Red FM Bajate Raho. Please do remember to log in on Friday, the 17th of July, for another set of great questions, The Algorithms of Love, Ravinder Singh in conversation with Nishtha Gautam, and exploring the incredible creative journey of author Ravinder Singh. Nishtha Gautam takes us through his prolific life from software engineering and writing best-selling modern romance to his latest e-single series, With Love, Ravinder. This will be at 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 2:30 p.m. British Summer Time, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Second session on Friday, the 17th of July, will be Live a Little, Howard Jacobson in conversation with Chandrahas Chaudhary. An award-winning writer and broadcaster, Howard Jacobson's novels include The Mighty Walzer, winner of the Bollinger Everyman Woodhouse Prize, Kaluki Nights, longlisted for the Man Booker Prize, and the highly acclaimed The Act of Love, and the Man Booker Prize 2010 winning The Finkler Question. Here in conversation with Chandras Chaudhary, he talks about his life in writing and his latest novel, Live a Little. And this will be at 8:30 p.m. IST, 4 p.m. British Summer Time, and 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And remember, taking a cue from Whitaker and Janaki Lenin, when you see your next snake, don't try and kill it. Call the wildlife conservationist in your area or call somebody from the helpline, and they will come and rescue the snake. There's nothing to be frightened of. Good night. Have a great week.